Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Nick Petro at the National Weather Service in Raleigh with the 11:30 briefing Tuesday morning, the 9th of October, as it relates to Hurricane Michael and its ultimate eventual impacts on central North Carolina. The latest as of 11 a.m. is Hurricane Michael. Max winds 110 miles per hour, moving north towards the Florida Panhandle. You can see, obviously, it's strengthened, and the latest forecast continues to show Michael moving across the southeast and across eastern North Carolina as we head through the late week period. So nothing major in terms of changes since our briefing yesterday in terms of the track. So let me just kind of put everything into context here. And of course, in the tropics, that is, and you could see Michael there in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. I want to point out that we are expecting some rain tomorrow, and I want to highlight where that rain's coming from. There's this area of cloudiness and enhanced moisture here north of the Bahamas, east of Florida. That system there is a non-tropical low or non-tropical system, rather, disturbance, if you will, and in an area of enhanced moisture that with the flow that's in place will get drawn up into the Carolinas during the day tomorrow and later in tomorrow. So let me just point out that the rain that we have in the forecast for tomorrow is not directly associated with Michael. You can see the distance between the two. So once this moisture gets drawn up kind of in this fashion here tomorrow, we're going to get a little bit of rain from that on Wednesday tomorrow. So again, just want to clarify that because that is in the forecast for tomorrow. All right, so as it relates more specifically to Michael, once tropical or hurricane and then tropical storm Michael makes its way up towards the Carolinas, we're still expecting this to be primarily a flood concern. Obviously, there'll be some gusty winds, and we can't rule out an isolated tornado or two, which, between the wind and the tornado, obviously there might be some power outages, but we think those are going to be fairly limited. I think the elevated concern is more for flooding, perhaps even river flooding eventually. As we go to the main points, wind, obviously breezy to windy conditions on Thursday, and certainly that could result in a few downed trees, especially, given that there's some trees still out there that have been weakened by Florence. We are expecting the strongest wind to be south and east of Raleigh. That'll be Thursday and Thursday night. So the concern also with flooding, period of heavy downpours are expected Wednesday night through Thursday night. Probably the heaviest of the rain will come Thursday evening and night, and that will give us a risk for some poor drainage and flash type flooding. So keep that in mind. We're pretty confident that we are going to see some areas that are going to experience localized flooding of that type. And then finally, all that rain finds its way into the rivers, and we'll be keeping a close eye on how much, if any, river flooding may occur. We're concerned about the basins in the eastern Piedmont, the coastal plain, and sand hills. I'll get into a little bit more of that and as we head through the next few slides. And that river flooding is expected to be a concern as we head into Friday into Saturday. As I pointed out, we can't rule out a few isolated tornadoes, mainly south and east of the Triangle, Thursday and Thursday night, but those should be, again, mainly south and east of the Triangle. Power outages, of course, even with the modest winds that we're expecting, given the wet ground conditions and the weakened trees that hadn't fallen from Florence, it may come down with this event. Obviously, when those trees fall, they may bring down some power lines with it, so don't be surprised to see a spike in power outages here sometime on Thursday, maybe Thursday night. All right. So wind speed probabilities still show tropical storm force winds, pretty good likelihood south and east of Raleigh, although really most of central and eastern North Carolina is in a reasonable risk for tropical storm force, maybe, in terms of frequent gusts at least. When are those winds going to affect our area? Mainly on Thursday night even. So I'll elaborate a little bit more on the timing of that. In terms of the rainfall, this has been increased a little bit since when we talked this time yesterday. We did have a swath of 4 to 6 in yesterday, but remember it was a fairly narrow kind of finger, if you will, of 4 to 6, mainly along I-95. Well, now that has been expanded and moved just a little bit further to the west. We are now expecting a pretty good portion of central North Carolina to see 4 to 6 inches of rain. Now, 4 to 6 inches of rain, um, that's going to cause problems if it comes down all in a short period of time. I think it's going to be a combination of obviously Wednesday's rain, but that should only be a small portion of this total rainfall amount. I think the bulk of this rain that I have on the screen right now will fall basically with the main event on Thursday and Thursday night. So keep that in mind that 4 to 6 inches of rain is going to give us some areas of flooding, localized poor drainage flooding, flash type flooding, urban and poor drainage stream flooding. That's starting to look a little more certain. We're locking in on that expectation again Thursday and Thursday night. Now, how will this affect the rivers? Well, clearly, 4 to 6 inches of rain would cause or will cause their rise on the rivers. How bad it's going to be, we're still trying to get a good modeling sense of that. 4 to 6 inches of rain now would be different than 4 to 6 inches of rain if Florence hadn't occurred. So since Florence occurred just a few weeks ago and the grounds are saturated still, it could be we could see a little more quicker response in the rivers than we otherwise would if Florence had not happened. So we'll be keeping an eye on that and look for flood watches and ultimately probably some warnings to be issued here as we go through the next couple of days. I do again want to remind folks though that this is going to be faster moving than Florence. So with Florence we were forecasting rainfall amounts by the feet in some cases. Obviously, since it's moving faster, that should help keep the total rainfall amounts lower than obviously we had with Florence. So that said, flooding should be less widespread as what we experienced with Florence. So definitely worth keeping in mind and noting. All right, so whoops, I went the wrong direction here. Okay, so here is an ensemble of models to show the range of possibilities of river flooding. These are not official National Weather Service rain and river forecasts. We will be updating this. The River Forecast Center is just now starting to roll out their official forecasts for the rivers across the area that do indicate some flooding. I'm going to update these slides with the official River Forecast Center's graphics here shortly, but just to give you a sense of the range of possibilities. And again, keeping in mind what we talked about yesterday, there are now more of these ensemble members here. And before I allude any more here, let me tell you that the graphics in the upper left are rainfall amounts, like how much rainfall. So here's the scale of rainfall on the left. So 0 all the way up to 5 inches. And each line represents a different model, 42 models altogether to give you a range of possibilities. So for example, there are some models that only show, an inch of rain falling, while there's other models that show 4 or 5 inches of rain falling. The solid black line is the median precipitation. And then the orange is the most likely range, So anyway, you could see, and down in the lower right is the river level simulation based on how much rain is in the upper left. So clearly you can see some of these higher rain amounts result in much more substantial flooding. And this is again on the Neuse River at Smithfield. So you can see there's several members here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8 or 9 members here that show, rivers cresting at moderate or maybe even major flood stage at Smithfield, whereas the most likely scenario has it getting just into flood stage. So I will point out, if we follow the trends, there are more of these higher members today than there were yesterday. So the trend is trending toward a more, perhaps a slightly more ominous solution. But remember, we still have another couple days to go before we really start to see this evolving. So things could change yet again. So, definitely want to stay tuned. Same thing, Neuse River, Goldsboro, and you can see the range of rain on the upper left and the range of river flooding on the right. Now, clearly, you're probably wondering, well, if you have several members that show moderate flooding or even major flooding at Smithfield, why is it not getting into Goldsboro? Whereas, as you notice here, almost all of them, all but one of the ensemble members keep the river flooding below moderate or just to minor or even no flooding at all. And I think that has to do with where the water is falling. The heaviest rain, if I back up, the heaviest rain is falling or is forecast to fall in the upper basins rather than in the middle and lower basins. So that's why those river simulations are not quite as bad for Goldsboro as say compared to Smithfield. Sorry about that. Bear with me here for just a second. I will call them back. All right. So anyway, so let me jump back to the river hydrographs here. So moving on to the Cape Fear. And there was a question. Melvin asked a question about the Cape Fear. So I hope these answer your questions, Melvin. So you could see on the Cape Fear River the range of possible rainfall amounts and what it would do for river flooding on the Cape Fear. The good news here is this trend is actually a little bit less than what we showed yesterday. In other words, almost all but 4 of the ensemble members, again, there are 42 models here, almost all but 4 show the river flooding staying below moderate. So just minor flooding. Okay, so we'll definitely, that's a good trend, all right? So the Rocky River near Norwood, unfortunately, there's a lot of members here in the moderate and major flood stage. That's, again, looking back, remembering what I showed you with the rain. The heaviest rain is a little bit further to the west, so obviously you're getting a lot of inflows here into the Rocky River. So if you're out in the southwest portion of central North Carolina, definitely make note of this and keep in mind that there could be another round of significant flooding concerns in the southwest portion of central North Carolina as you're heading toward the Charlotte area. All right. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight just a few of these. We'll be updating these slides with the official, River Forecast Center and National Weather Service hydrographs here as we head through the afternoon as those come in. But I wanted to kind of summarize. Before we get to the summary, let me just show you a couple other things real quick here that you might find helpful. So what I've got here is a simulation of the rainfall, and this is just one model. So take it for what it is, and it's just one of dozens of simulations. This is the GFS model, which has come into better agreement recently with the European model. So obviously it's not perfect, but it just to give you a rough idea of the timing, okay, the timeline for this. And you could see, just follow, if you would, follow in the, let me make this a little bigger. Takes up a little easier to see here. Follow in the timeline at the top. And you can see right here, here's the timeline, 8 a.m. Tuesday forecast. So as I roll that forward, you can see 8 p.m. Tuesday. And the green is, the shades of green represent, a very rough simulation of where it would be raining. It's sort of like a simulated radar. So that's 8 p.m. The bottom line is that today there could be a few isolated, maybe widely scattered showers, maybe a thunderstorm, but mostly shower type activity during the day today. Not a whole lot of rain. Looks like it's dry tonight. But look at tomorrow morning, Wednesday, and notice that large swath of rain here moving into South Carolina. That's what we've been talking about here the last day or two with that enhanced moisture north of the Bahamas. And look how that moves up northward during the day tomorrow. So by 2 p.m. we're going to see rain overspreading a large portion of central North Carolina from the south, and that band of rain, I hate to call it a band of rain because that almost implies tropical. This is actually not Michael rainfall. This is totally separate feature. So anyway, that swath of rain, if you will, is forecast. I'm going to go back here. Here's 2 p.m. Here's 8 p.m. Wednesday. So from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. you can see that swath of rain moving across central North Carolina. So if you got afternoon or evening plans for tomorrow, it's going to be pretty wet. So keep that in mind. And then that moves on and moves out. And then by Thursday, now we start to see some of these outer rain bands from Michael. Here, this what you see down to the southwest. That is the Michael rain. So then as I continue to step this forward, 2 p.m. Thursday, here's 8 p.m. Thursday. Notice by late day Thursday, look at the heavy rain, these heavier rain bands moving northeast and across central North Carolina. There's 2 a.m. Friday, and then fortunately by Friday morning, it will begin to move off the Carolina and Virginia coast. Okay, so let me back up again and show you when the heaviest rain's coming. 2 p.m. tomorrow, or 2 p.m. Thursday, look for the rain to maybe begin to pick up, but the real heaviest rain is probably going to be from late afternoon Thursday through Thursday evening into the early overnight hours, okay? So late day Thursday into Thursday night, you're going to have this swath of heavy rain. So that means that the heaviest rain and the greatest risk for flooding, flash flooding that is, will be late day Thursday, Thursday evening, Thursday night. Okay, so that's the time of the day when conditions are going to be worse. Late day Thursday, Thursday evening, Thursday night. What about winds? Let me back up. This is not a model. This is our official National Weather Service forecast of wind. And bear with me here while I make the screen a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Hang on here just a second. All right, so that's you can see the wind speeds here as I mouse over. These light gray shades are less than 10 miles per hour. All right, so let me step this forward. Tuesday night, overnight into Wednesday morning, 5 a.m. Wednesday, 8 a.m. Wednesday, still pretty light wind. 11 a.m. Wednesday, we're talking, this isn't too bad, maybe 15 to 20 mile per hour wind gusts. These are gusts, not sustained. Keep that in mind. So a little breezy tomorrow, maybe 15, maybe 20 mile per hour gusts, nothing too terribly bad. As we head into Wednesday night, pretty much the same. We're talking, maybe 10 to 20 mile per hour wind gusts. Nothing too terribly bad, but watch how we can see, notice down to the south in South Carolina, Thursday morning, the stronger winds associated directly with Michael will begin moving up. So that by 11 a.m. Thursday morning, we're looking at wind gusts in the mid-20s. And then by 2 p.m. Thursday, now we start to see some of these wind gusts 35 to maybe 40 miles per hour. And then as the center of the storm passes by, or basically just rides right up I-95, that's essentially the track of the center of the lows, right up I-95. We're going to see by late day Thursday some of these 30 to 40, maybe slightly higher gusts to begin to affect areas mainly south and east of Durham, south and east of Raleigh. Raleigh, Wade County may even get into some of the 30 to 35 mile per hour wind gusts, but the worst of the wind, if you just kind of focus on that, let me draw a line here. The worst of the wind, the strongest winds are going to be basically east of that line that I just draw. So what that's saying there is that's where we would expect, based on that forecast, the most the greatest number of downed trees, the greatest occurrence of power outages, we think would be, again, that's almost right along US 1. Let's just say east of US 1 is where we'd most likely would have the greatest number. Not to say that, the Triad in places like Lexington and Albemarle, you're still going to maybe see a few isolated downed trees, maybe some isolated power outages, because with all the rain that's coming, even a modest wind gust, of 25 miles per hour, if the tree is leaning anyway and the ground is soaking wet, you could have a few trees that fall. But the worst of the wind in terms of trees and power outages should be mainly east of US 1. And then that's 8 p.m. Thursday. You could see it continuing, and then that's the end of this loop. So again, so from basically afternoon Thursday evening, Thursday night is when we're expecting the worst of the wind, and the worst of the wind may be mainly east of US 1. Okay, so that is the well, let's move on to the summary. Michael, as I pointed out earlier, will be faster moving than Florence. So while we are expecting flooding with the current storm, it should be less widespread as we experience with Florence. Okay, our confidence is gradually increasing on the event and the expected impacts. Timing wise for the heavy downpours, again, Wednesday night through Thursday night, the heavy downpours could result in localized poor drainage, urban, and flash flooding. And then we have to concern ourselves with the river flooding. And that'll depend on how much rain, obviously. The main basins that we have to watch include the Ha, the Cape Fear, and the Neuse basins are the ones that we think could be impacted the worst. Okay, and their tributaries, of course. Breezy to windy conditions Thursday and Thursday night could result in a few downed trees, especially the ones that were weakened during Florence. That's for all of central North Carolina, but the greatest occurrence of that should be mainly east of US 1. All right, and then we can't rule out a couple isolated tornadoes, mainly south and east of the triangle during that time. And of course, don't be surprised if your power goes out because, with these downed trees and wet ground and such, some of those trees will inevitably, falling trees will take out those power lines too. All right, so that wraps up our 11:30 webinar for Michael.